Mortal Kombat is not only one of gaming's most beloved franchises, but when we extend its scope to the entertainment industry as a whole, the series has been referenced by dozens of movies, shows, comics, and more. Perhaps one of the elements that makes Mortal Kombat such a unique phenomenon, among other highly successful fighting game series like Street Fighter or Tekken, is its core aesthetic. Insofar as we can say, 90s gratuitous violence is an aesthetic. It's interesting to see this evolution throughout the decades, how Mortal Kombat usually referenced material from the 90s insofar as to make allusions to, and not necessarily use the exact same images, to now when we have new age comics such as Invincible lending their own IP to Mortal Kombat to bring some of their characters into the series. Finally, achieving the dreams of a young Ed Boon who wanted to make a game about Jean-Claude Van Damme, and now, 30 years later, Ed finally gets the action star to be in the game. It remains to be seen how much of an impact Kameos will have on the series as a whole in the long run, though from the initial gameplay reveals in beta earlier this year, it seems everyone is optimistic this change is a positive one, and will bring forth a new era for Mortal Kombat esports. If you want to find out though, keep an eye on DashFight.com, where we will publish Mortal Kombat 1 character guides by top players, including their best buttons, strings, combos, and, of course, which cameos pair up best with each. There's another interesting quandary about cameos that we want to explore in today's video. With cameos being much simpler than their fully playable counterparts, not just gameplay-wise, but aesthetically as well. For instance, with Motaro's gigantic size being properly represented in the game, there's an opportunity to, well, get silly with it. You know what was a cool, violent, but visually striking and memorable movie about a 90s built franchise? Dredd, I mean Mortal Kombat. Okay, released in 1995, just a few years after the original Mortal Kombat game, but at the same time as the first film in the franchise, Judge Dredd is a fantastic series that could do with some representation in the Mortal Kombat world. Although we are, holy hell, 10 years detached from the last Dredd movie, it was a critically acclaimed film, and it was a nice evolution on that action formula 90s Hollywood had made, but let go sometime after. For Kombat Pack 1, we already have a mind-blowing roster of comic and TV shows inspired big, strong, deadly men. Homelander, Omni-Man, and Peacemaker. Yet we would argue they are missing the one and only Karl Urban, who was the most recent actor to play Dredd, and 10 years later has shown in The Boys that he is as solid of an actor for action as they come. Since Anthony Starr is already voicing Homelander for the first DLC, why not bring Karl along and get him to fade back into Joseph Dredd one more time? Please. In true you scratch my back, I scratch yours fashion, the Last of Us live-action series set aside time to throw in a short scene with Ellie discovering an old Mortal Kombat arcade. Perhaps NRS could return the favor beyond an Easter egg of their own. Sure, it might not be a titular character, but clickers are some fearsome creatures overrun by brain parasites. They are entirely blind and rely on echolocation to hunt. Once they find prey, however, they go berserk and can be one of the most terrifying enemies in the game, although not the toughest or rarest. It also wouldn't be the first time these fellows appeared outside of its main series. Games and even animated shows have all made reference to them, especially the terrifying clicking noise they use to locate their targets. A fast-running and grappling cameo fighter with a terrifying clicking cue as soon as it comes out might be just the right combination of silly and scary to hit the 90s undertones of the MK series. One of the many early 3D era fighters of the series that was surprisingly left behind in this most recent reboot. Even as others like Darius, Sujinko, and Stryker enjoyed a new appearance on the Kameos roster for the game at release, Kai, the Chicagoan Earth-realmed helping the rest of the cast throughout MK4's story, is nowhere to be seen in the Kameos cast. He is a great fit for it too, as he was part of the White Lotus Society, the group created by Raiden, of which Liu Kang and Kung Lao were a part of. So while we are giving a lot of old characters a new polygon count upgrade, why not bring back the Detroit native to the cast? Although Liu Kang went as far back as he could to bring back historic Mortal Kombat characters, he missed a very important one, to me at least, Blaze. By the way, we're giving away a hitbox and MK1 here on the channel. You only need to do two things. First, subscribe to the channel. Second, scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description. This will take you to a form where you will need to provide a code word. And your code word for this video is Melina. Thanks for watching the video, and let's continue. Those of you who watched our old video on which characters we want to see in a new Mortal Kombat game will remember him well. Armageddon's final boss deserves a shout out in the form of a cameo. And we have the precedent for it too, with Motaro himself. The Outworld Elemental was actually first seen in Mortal Kombat 2 as a background character in the Pit 2 stage, but later brought into the game's roster through the first few MK 3D era titles. We think it is high time he takes another step to leap into a new timeline as a projectile-based fireball shooting cameo fighter. If we were ever to write a list of actors who best embodied a role, Wesley Snipes' Blade would likely be in the top 5. Believe it or not, Blade was one of the first cult classic Marvel movies. Before Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr., if you asked the average movie enthusiast in the early 2000s what the best superhero franchise was, they would have said Blade. Well, maybe until Sam Raimi strung together the original Spider-Man trilogy. I know it feels almost sacrilegious to recommend a Marvel hero for a franchise that, for most intents and purposes, has access to the vast library of DC Comics to pull from. But I think we can all agree Blade is the perfect candidate for a rule of cool. In the same way that Jean-Claude Van Damme embodied his role in Bloodsport and inspired a young Ed Boon to get the first Midway team together and pitch their fighting game, decades later he is finally in Mortal Kombat 1. This is not the first time we've put up Nightwing as a great pick for a character in a modern Mortal Kombat. And although Dick may still be quite far away from being in the game, a cameo appearance still feels like it would be a great way to bring the character into the fold. His appearance during the Injustice series as Damian Wayne, who would later take on the mantle of Robin, was very fun, and there are certainly a lot of Injustice fans left in the NRS scene that we are sure would rejoice at getting a shout out by including him in the game, some way or another. Speaking of returning characters, the Joker feels like he would be a great choice, especially when paired with the different skins for each cameo fighter. Sure, we don't really need to touch the Jared Leto version if we don't want to, but thankfully, there are plenty of other versions of the trickster to pull from, including Mortal Kombat 11 itself. It is a returning character immediately from the previous game, an out-of-franchise pick to boot. But there is something deeply gratifying about NRS's vision for the Joker in Mortal Kombat 11 that we feel is worth replanting him into a new flower pot in Liu Kang's house. Hey, you and I both know very few people wanted Kronika back. And although it seems this time around she will only be a part of the story, and hopefully not a full boss fight, there is something else worth saving from Mortal Kombat 11 outside of Garrus. Cetrion, the fallen Elder God, would be a great projectile and zoning cameo to throw into the pool of characters in that part of the roster. Unless you'd rather it be given to someone like Shinnok, which, you know, is also a thing. Perhaps the more interesting idea we wanted to pose was for her not to be in the game. At least not in her physical appearance from Mortal Kombat 11. Like the mighty Elder God she is supposed to be, she could be called upon by players, wherein her fingertip would break through the upper side of the screen and flick off opponents into the wall. Once again, if cameos have much more freedom to be whatever they want, why not get silly with it? Speaking of silly ideas, Paramount recently partnered with Street Fighter VI for an exclusive event. They even played the TMNT theme at EVO this year to announce it. Of course, there are a handful of challenges with getting Paramount, and especially a Nickelodeon IP, to appear in a Mortal Kombat game. The good news is, cameos don't tend to get ripped apart violently. At worst, they are beaten up a bit, but nothing serious. Casey Jones is also a fantastic pick for the role. As an ice hockey wearing vigilante, Casey has all the tools he needs to be a great addition to the cameos roster. Armed with a hockey stick, baseball bat, golf club, among many other bludgeon objects. This is to say nothing of his extensive background as either a hockey player or just a fan, depending on the canon you choose. If you don't think that has any weight, then do yourself a favor and look up what NHL brawls looked like in the 90s. Thrilling stuff. If Casey can be half the grappler Bob Probert was, he will be fine in the Mortal Kombat universe. Kameos will offer NRS an opportunity to do some very fun things. Not just characters from its own franchise, but that of other IPs. Although there's obviously going to be some natural pull to bring more Warner Brothers properties, as they are the owners of the studio after all, we hope the team will get the chance to work with entities outside and, well, get silly with it. We are in a post-cynic world of fighting games. Seriousness is cool and all, but when you have the chance to bring forth unique and odd characters into the stage, why not try to break through the monotony of it? Let us know in the comments who you would like to see as a cameo fighter in Mortal Kombat 1, and we'll see you in the next video.